Hello, and welcome to Leadership Table Talk, a show designed to help you develop and improve your leadership skills and talents. I'm your host, Dr. Mary Gillam. I am a retired Air Force colonel and former member of the Senior Executive Service Corps with the Department of Defense. Today, I want to discuss building effective teams in a nonprofit environment. With me today to discuss this topic is Bishop Dr. Steve Lowery and his lovely wife, Reverend Dr. Janice Lowery. He is the senior pastor of the National Church of God in Fort Washington, Maryland, and she is the director of the Ladies Ministry. Welcome to the show.
It is a great pleasure. Pleasure to be with you.
Thank you guys for coming. First of all, I would like for you to just share with our audience a little bit about your backgrounds.
Very good. Janice, go ahead and begin with that.
Steve and I, born and raised in Tennessee, and 34 years ago, we felt a call on our life to come up to this area, to the D.C. area, and minister alongside with his father. Steve is a businessman, and my degree is in elementary education. And so as soon as we came to the area, he went into the church, and I began building a school. At one time, National Christian Academy was the fastest growing school in Maryland, and a fact that we were very proud of. We still have a rock solid basketball team that we're very proud of. Yes. We are K-3 through high school and then a seminary. So all of those things in our background prepared me to come into this area and begin another world of education for myself. And we have 4 children, and that was important to us at that time, 34 years ago, that we have just exactly the right environment we wanted, not only for our children, but for children there in the area.
Fantastic. Yeah. So, Pastor?
Well, I attended Lee University, both of us did, and I was totally sure that I was going to be a businessman my entire life. I opened an electronics corporation and did that for about 3 years, and just felt a stirring that that there was something on the horizon. Also was in banking for about 2 years, and one of the things that I have found out subsequent to all of that is it seems as though everything that you do prepares you for what is your next step. So many of the things, my business major, my accounting major or emphasis, my music minors, and all of those things prepared me for what I was to do once I got into a place of truly fulfilling what I feel like is God's calling on my life. And that's one of the things that I find so important about leadership. Don't ever, the Bible says, don't despise those days of small beginnings or early beginnings, because, and I think it kind of leaves out the next line, because the line I feel like goes next is, because those things are preparing you, or the substance, or the learning experience that you're going to be needing for where your next step is. And so we left Cleveland, as Janice said. We moved up here with my mom and dad. We started with 59 members, a big promotion, 59 members, and began to build what we felt like God was telling us to build at the time. And I assisted my dad in music ministries and in many of the other leadership ministries. But then my dad, after we had been here for 14 years, my dad went back to Cleveland, Tennessee, to the leadership of our whole denomination, and the elders here asked me to continue the ministry here. I didn't take that lightly. I went into a extended 3-week fast and prayer to decide if that was what I felt like God was having me do. And so we did. And so we're continuing to fulfill what God had called us to do at that point.
Absolutely. That is fantastic. So since the show is based around leadership, can you kind of just describe or define what you perceive leadership to be?
Certainly. I consider leadership to be an ongoing process. That leadership is not something that is a static, but it is something that is in constant flux, because our economy is in constant flux. Our society is in flux. Things that were important to our society when we first came here are not the important points anymore. It has changed significantly. And that, to me, is one of the biggest directions or points of leadership, is that you are a part of constant change. And you must at all times be willing and open to observe what is the next step in leadership. A statement that I have recently been teaching in our men's class is, I believe, also applicable to general leadership, whether it be corporate or whether it be nonprofit or church. And there is a difference between just nonprofit leadership and church leadership, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But what that is, I believe that one of the biggest barriers to the next step for any church, any move of God, any denomination, any nonprofit, any corporate environment, is the people who were important in the last big move that corporation or that organization made. Those people actually can become the biggest barrier to the next step that corporation is to take, because what was successful under that group in that move or in that season can become the barriers, because they feel like it worked then, I knew what I was doing then, but I don't want these new guys coming in and making a change in what I know worked here. And so many times the experts of 10 years ago are the barriers to the experts that are on the horizon. And if we don't understand that leadership and that success is not, as I used before, static, that it is indeed a progressive form, art form. It's an art form of acquiring what is next so that you can be successful in the next arena.
That was so interesting, Pastor, what you said, because it leads into one question that I have regarding team players. And so, Pastor Jan, how would you define a team player, if you will?
A team player for me, because I've worked mostly in the realm of education, but a team player is somebody who buys into the vision of the leader, who respects the goals of the leader, who wants to go to the same place that the leader is going, and they want to link up and go arm in arm. In other words, they're not doing their own thing all the time, and yet a team player also takes the initiative to say, I love the way this is going. I wonder if I would, perfect our cause, perfect the vision by introducing this into the game plan, if you will. And for me, a team player is somebody who is loyal, who is honest, who is going to stand there and fight with you, somebody who has, the initiative, but also the motivation to move forward.
Absolutely.
And to link with you and help you and decide they want to build with you. And many times that means being with you for the long run. Because buildings aren't built overnight, and neither are teams, or neither are corporations or businesses or organizations. And so in that respect, I think it's very important that you build your team with people who respect you and want to work with you, and they bring a certain flavor to the team that nobody else can.
Fantastic. You mentioned something regarding vision. Pastor, can you expound on why it is important to have a vision?
It is important to have a vision. Of course, the scripture that is always quoted in that regard is, with a lack of vision, people perish. Well, the greater interpretation of that scripture is that without a vision, people cast off restraints, they cast off discipline. Because a leader doesn't lead from right now. If you are in the right now only, you are only maintaining what you've got. And I don't want to be in a maintenance mode. You have to have a vision of not just what needs to be accomplished in the moment, but you have to have a vision of what the next thing is. Because if you're not ready for the next thing, then where you are is going to bypass you, and you are going to, I don't know, you're going to lose the cutting edge of what you were supposed to be and who you're supposed to be. Going back to your question about what's important with team leaders, it is important that a team leader knows that when they are a part of the behind closed doors conversations, it is their responsibility to create. It is their responsibility to, if they disagree with you, disagree. But then when the votes are taken, and when something is not exactly what they thought it should be, that they go out of that meeting supporting just as much as if it had been their idea. And so that's where I feel like leadership, especially team leadership on the individual level, where it rests.
Oh, that is fantastic. I really enjoyed how you tied that in together there, because I think it's very important that teams understand, or team members understand, the role that they play in the organization. Absolutely. And that you're there, and it's very important that you buy into the vision of the leader. Would you agree with that?
I absolutely agree with that. We'll address that just a little more later, because when we came, the vision was not mine. The vision was what God had placed in my father's heart. And so I had to acquire the vision. And that's something that every team member has to be able to do. You have to be able to acquire the vision.
Fantastic. Well, it looks like we've come to a breaking point here, but when we return, we will pick up more discussion on that particular topic. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
Channel 10 doesn't have ratings, and we can't read your mind. The only way we know that you're watching is if you tell us. Let us know you enjoy a show on Channel 10 by leaving a message on our viewer comment line. It's a local call, and you don't have to leave your name. Thank you for supporting local television.
Welcome back to Leadership Table Talk. My guests today are Dr. Steve Lowery and Dr. Janice Lowery from the National Church of God. Before the break, we were actually talking about some of the techniques that you have used in the past that have been successful in building teams. Can you expound on those, please?
Be glad to. One of the things, I have worked in several different arenas in my life, both in the corporate world, in the nonprofit world, and now in the church world. We've done that for 33 years. Our church ministry. One of the things that through the years I've really come to understand is that corporate leadership and team building is done differently than is nonprofit or even the church world. And you can't lump all nonprofits into a nonprofit scenario because they're all done so much differently. Like here at this station, it is more of a corporate model with a nonprofit end result. And then March of Dimes or any of the other nonprofits, they all operate differently with different goals and different measures of success. In a church environment or religious organization environment, the leadership especially the leadership team, is set up differently than some of those others because you have a very small core of individuals who you would consider to be paid staff or paid pastoral staff. And then with that, you have to accomplish everything you're going to accomplish with that small staff. And then much of your team is set up of volunteers. And with that, that becomes in some ways problematic. It's a help, of course, but it's problematic because you're dealing with a variety of experience levels, skill levels, and things along that line. And there's some things even right now that we're beginning to set up that we've needed for some time in our volunteer groups. It is different in the regard that in a small core group environment, if you come up with the plan, you're pretty much going to have to do that plan. Somebody comes up with, I mean, let's just say something simple. Somebody comes up with, hey, we want our youth to do a car wash. Okay, you take your youth and go do a car wash. I mean, it's you fulfill what you come up with, which is a different kind of a scenario than corporate or manufacturing. And so, with that being the regard, one of the things that we have to do in that corporate arena, in that nonprofit, religious nonprofit arena, is we have to identify, first of all, the skills that the individuals have.
Yes.
We have to release into their hands the ability to be as creative as they can possibly be in those areas. If I walk into the room and I'm the only one in the room that can do anything, man, we're not going anywhere. I don't know if you're aware, I'm sure you are, of the leader, coach, trainer, John Maxwell.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
John Maxwell is a marvelous trainer and coach. And I have followed his leadership training for years. I mean, all the way back when it was cassettes, okay? If anybody remembers cassettes. So I have followed that, and it's been just solid all through the years. One of the things that he identifies is what is called the law of the lid.
Yes.
The law of the lid is essentially that an organization can go no higher than the ability or the training of the leader. In the church world, that is slightly different. That law of the lid does not specifically apply to every nonprofit, which is a church. Because in many cases, the leader will have his sets of goals or her sets of goals and abilities and skills, but that person has to know that they are not the total end all of everything that needs to take place. If I identify you as a leader over a particular part of the ministry or a particular group, then I have to trust you and your skill levels to take it to another place that I can't. If I was trying to do the ladies' ministry, okay, I'm going to top out. I mean, because there's only so much I could do in that regard. But if I take that responsibility, I place it into Janice's lap, and she is able to take it with her educational background, with her ministerial background, with her training. If she's able to take it to another place, the whole ministry grows beyond my lid. I don't become a lid. Yes. I don't become a barrier. It's able to grow beyond that. And this is what I keep trying to tell our pastoral staff. If you're over the youth, I want you to take the youth to a place that I could never take them. If you're over the men's ministry, I want you to take that men's ministry to another place that I can't take them. And I feel like I'm consuming all your time here, but let me give you one example of something I feel like originated in my mind, but I've seen it expressed in other ways. I expressed to our leadership in our pastoral leadership and even into our elder leadership, I expressed it to them this way. And I drew a circle on the board. And I said, this is the way most ministries think of who they minister to. And took the plate, you draw out a little circle here, and that's the music ministry. You draw out another circle here, that's the youth. Another circle here, but all of those are on the plate. And I said, I want us to think beyond that. That cannot be where we stop the model of our leadership. Okay, so here's the plate. That's great. That's the church. But over here, just barely attached to the plate, I want all of this to become the ladies' ministry, involving the entire community. And if some of them are a part of the church, great. But I want to affect the whole community of ladies. Same thing with youth and men. Well, I want our music ministries and praise and worship ministries. I want 25% of it to happen in the church and the rest of it to involve the entire community. So my vision of leadership and what I see as the successful model for leadership within a church ministry is that getting past the idea that there is a lid that will shut you down. Okay? So I'll leave that with you there.
Pastor, that was just amazing. I really like the way you pulled all that together, and I love the fact that you did talk about John Maxwell. I just happen to be a certified John Maxwell team player.
Excellent.
And went through that training and so forth. But before we get out of here, I definitely want to make sure that people know exactly where your church is again and what your website is. And
okay.
Could you share that with the audience, please?
Okay. We are in, I've done all the talking. I'm sorry. We're in Fort Washington, Maryland. It's the National Church of God, Fort Washington, Maryland, 6700 Bach Road, Fort Washington, Maryland. Our website is currently in flux. I would actually say don't go to our website. The best way to connect with what is happening is go to National Church of God on Facebook. Mm-hmm. And that has all of the current things that are taking place. It has contact information and those kinds of things. We have through this we are calling the Year of Revival, and that being the case, there are some of the greatest teacher, preacher, seminar directors in Christianity today, and some that are out of the corporate world that are going to be talking to us through the course of this year, preparing us for the revival of this age. Mm-hmm. Revival doesn't just mean everybody getting together and having church and praising God. Revival means that we need a renewal to take place in the heart of our country, mm-hmm. in the heart of our community. Mm-hmm. People are desperate. People are broke. The people are who used to work 2 and 3 jobs, they can't now because so few places to work. And so those things being the case, I believe we have to attempt to do everything we can to help folks have hope, help folks be motivated, communicate with people effectively so that they can understand what the next steps are for them and their lives. In team leadership, I believe in loyalty. I believe in honesty. I believe in communication abilities. All of those things, because if you have an honest individual who is ethical and you have somebody who is able to communicate that calling, what can happen is this. Those things can actually make up for some of the skills that they may not have, because when everything else fails, they're still ethical. So.
Pastor, Pastor Jan and Pastor Steve, it has truly been a pleasure having you guys here. It looks like we just ran out of time because I would love to have you guys to come back so that we can continue this conversation and everything. And I also want to thank you for tuning into the Leadership Table Talk show. I hope that you have learned some great team building tips from our guests today. And so if you have any questions about today's show, please contact me at my website, m2gleadershipbiz.com. Again, thank you for watching, and I will see you again next time. Bye-bye.